I let my baby hit Rodeo, blow some dollars. Drop top Impala, pay match your Pradas. And now we bouncing in the whip like my hydraulic.
Welcome to the KYP podcast. It's a show about letting go of your ego or things that prevents you from reaching your goals, and at the end of the day, being unapologetically yourself. My name is Danny. I'm here with my co-host
KYP James.
KG.
And we have another special guest over here. We have Andy, who is a Stanford graduate, entrepreneur, the co-founder of A&E Academy, and the host behind the podcast, Mind Diary.
That's right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Definitely. And I think on today's episode, we wanted to discuss more about being uncomfortable, facing all of these little things that makes it so that you want to stay in your comfort zone. But for you, you've done so many things that you wanted to get out of the circle of comfort, really. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things to unpack. First of all, your family situation, your endeavors, being an entrepreneur, and definitely I really want to discuss about your podcast and the things that you've done in the podcast. And while we're at it, I mean, why not just play a quick clip of your podcast, right? Let's tune in for a quick 30 seconds for it. Let's play it.
Some may be an easy choice, and some may be a harder one, like the one I'm currently facing. But I am simply a depiction of all the decisions I have made along this journey of life. So in order to improve this depiction of myself and my quality of life, it is important to always select the harder route. And so I did. But today I did it differently. I turned the water to the coldest right away, and I rushed in, expecting my body to flinch.
So that was an episode 5 actually of your podcast. Tell us more about your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, amazing setup. Love the room, love the lighting, love the crew. Very professional. It's a pleasure to be here. Honestly, very flattered to be part of this. Full transparency, my podcast does not have the budget that they carry, so it's more of a studio shop. Season 1 was all about storytelling, and I actually didn't have any guests. Moving into a new city like Toronto, I was alone with a lot of my thoughts, and I thought some of those thoughts, they're good or bad, but I think being reflective, I could provide some value in sharing those thoughts with people. That's kind of the original TLDR of how Mind Diary started. Obviously, we do a lot of series of Mind Diary going forward. For example, the 30-day challenge. So one thing I want to ask everybody is, growing up, has there been things that, you've always thought you wanted it to happen, but maybe didn't do because of, situation, timing, whatever. For me, just to give an example, it's like playing the guitar or trying out boxing or, even skydiving and stuff like that. Like, top of the mind, do you guys have anything?
You want to start, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a time when I was younger where I was really on that mindset of seeking discomfort. And then I think one thing led to another. I kind of got into that rut of comfortability. And then I caught myself I would have all these plans to try something new on the weekend. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then when I wake up for the day, it's just like, oh, it's just so comfortable to continue the habit of sleeping in late, wasting time watching Netflix and all that. But very recently, I've gotten back into seeking discomfort because I've gotten to a point in my life where, I'm finally on my own path. And I'm making a lot of progress. This is what I envisioned 1 year ago. Everything I'm doing right now, I've kind of fulfilled that vision. But then the question begs to ask, what's next, right? How do I keep this going, number one, and how do I build upon it? And then now all the kind of things that I've been putting off, just little daily routine things like waking up earlier and doing something productive in the morning. Same thing with the weekends, having a consistent exercise routine, eating healthier, taking care of my house and my space. These are things that I all neglected when I was younger. Just the way I grew up. I was very privileged to be able to live my childhood kind of protected and sheltered from the real adult world. And now that I'm growing into becoming my own person, you know, I find it incredibly beneficial to push yourself outside of your, work or career, what you're working on. It's what you do in your daily life. It all translates. How you do one thing is an indicator of how you do everything.
It becomes your identity, but also, like you said, it's a lifestyle, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing a year ago, but I think if you carry on that seeking discomfort mentality, it applies to everything, right? Like from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. It's a million decisions in between. And I think like there's no anecdote to, you have to do this at this time and this time, because everyone's mindset's different. But it's more of like, okay, I'm going to be the best version of myself by making that discomfort choice. For example, cold shower challenge, right? Like waking up at the top of the morning, deciding to just turn the nozzle to the coldest. I did this challenge in December in Toronto. It was like negative 40 degrees.
Jeez.
And I'm like, it can't get worse than this, right? And then it doesn't. So after the shower, I feel like the rest of my day, I'm bolder. I'm more confident with my client. I'm doing more. I'm talking to the guy on the subway because nothing can hurt me now, right? I've done it all.
You've done the hardest thing
in the
at
start
the beginning
of the morning,
of the
exactly,
day.
right? And obviously, there's many ways of doing it. Like I said, it doesn't have to be cold shower. It could be for Kevin working out. He gets shots up in the morning, like 8 a.m., and then he comes back feeling rejuvenated, right? So it's whatever you want to challenge yourself, but it's that mindset of seeking that discomfort. What can I do?
And going into just a specific moment when trying to do those things, like on the weekends now, I've been making that a habit.
I've
getting
noticed.
some shots up early in the morning, but right before it, when I'm in bed, there's all these thoughts. It's like, it's okay. We could just stay in bed. It's really nice here. We can make it up tomorrow or whatever. But I always feel bad throughout the whole day. Like it's just a little more negative of a day if I do succumb to those feelings and I don't make it, right?
Because you carry that mentality, actually, you don't notice, but like for other things, you've chose to like be more held back as well, right?
Exactly.
You set the tone.
But the days where I make that decision and beat that kind of inner dialogue that's hesitant, I never once I go do that thing, and at the end of it, I feel bad. I always feel great.
That's
I
what
always
I'm saying.
feel.
It could be a challenge. It could be the worst time during, but at the end of it, you were glad you did it, and that's
Always.
That's mentality.
And James, you're recently, I noticed in the last year you've been taking fitness a lot more serious.
He's a beast on the court.
He's a beast, man.
Watch out for James.
Since I moved away, he was not like this when I moved away. I can kind of, I can kind of lock him up a little bit, But he's got that power now, and I think it has a lot to do with CrossFit. I think you're really into that now, right?
I mean, I think CrossFit was it's definitely helping me boost my skills in terms of explosiveness and cardio, because specifically for basketball, because basketball's all cardio at the end of the day. You can probably just not shoot and not get any basket, but if you can run for an hour, 2 hours in a game,
you want that guy on
you
the
could
team.
pass the ball, you want that guy, because they're putting an effort no matter what. I think fitness is a good way to train your brain to push yourself to the limit. CrossFit, I'm going to a spot called F45. I think a lot of people probably know it. It's like all around the world, and it's 45 minutes of grueling workouts, military style. It's not the classic CrossFit that you're thinking. It's more like you go intervals, so 45 seconds of max reps, and then sometimes there's no rest. Sometimes there's like only a 20-second rest, 10 seconds, and you doing that for 45 minutes with 30 people in the room. And the first time I did it, I wanted to fucking pass out. I just wanted to puke because it's physically grueling. Like it's cardio and it's heavy lifting for 45 minutes. But the fact that like I've seen the difference now where like as I've been doing it for a couple months, every day gets easier. Like that 45 minutes feels short now.
Same with the cold shower, man.
Yeah.
Same thing. Yep.
Yeah.
It feels easier.
It's just
but it didn't get easier. You got tougher. That's the thing.
That's the thing. I don't think I got stronger because the weights are not. I'm not increasing my weight every single time. It's more in here.
Mental. Yeah, tougher.
Yeah.
Not stronger, tougher.
And it does help that there's other people around doing the same thing and they're not stopping. So it
power
makes
of
you push
influence.
yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes you push. Like there's girls that are like probably lifting heavier than me, and they're keep on going. So if I rest for
Yeah.
10 seconds while they're keep going doing reps,
We
I'm
can
like,
talk about
damn.
this later, but this is
Yeah.
where the ego is useful. So I think Mind Diary at the very start, and when I was still very ignorant, I was
Yeah.
like, oh no, kill your ego death. That's the way to go. I actually disagree now that I'm
You
a
can
little
use
bit
it
older.
in different
I think you
situations,
should
yeah.
know when you suppress your ego, but
Yes,
at
sir.
times your ego is your best friend when it comes to being competitive, challenging yourself. And you need that.
And that's basketball for me.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
an ego
Agreed.
game as much as it's a sport. You don't want to lose, so you keep pushing yourself. And even this morning, it was like grueling hot. It was uncomfortable, like
Absolutely.
35 degrees, 10 a.m.
Absolutely.
No shade. There's
Nobody
no
else was
tree.
there except us.
Yeah, we were just like competitive. Like we didn't not let go at all, and we were just like dying.
Yep. It was a
Yeah.
great time.
I think the most important thing, right, is that ego is not a bad thing. But like Annie mentioned, if ego is limiting you to do things, let's say you have a company and then someone says, or let's say we take your podcast, for example, someone says, yo, bro, like I don't like your podcast. I don't like
X
this.
and
I don't
Z, yeah,
like
exactly.
X, Y, Z. And then you say, yo, bro, fuck it.
Yep.
I know what I'm doing. I'll keep doing it. It's limiting. But
Exactly.
if you take that ego and you see, hey, these guys are doing better than me and they're doing what I'm doing and I want to be better and it hurts me because I want to be better.
Exactly.
And I take what I'm doing to make it better, then ego is all it's for the better.
You got to control that ego effectively to you, right? And I think
Exactly.
sometimes it hurts a lot more people than it helps, but it's recognizing the capability of the ego and kind of using that to your advantage, I think.
I don't think having no ego is
good.
is probably beneficial to anybody.
You're a pushover, you're not competitive,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
driven.
But I think where the kind of feeling of wanting to talk about ego and being conscious of it is because so many people walk around, not even cognizant that a lot of their actions and emotions are influenced by it, right? There was a point in my life I didn't even see it. I couldn't even identify it. Now that I can identify, I'm like, oh my God, okay.
Yeah, that's what's causing me to make
That's
decisions,
why
yeah.
that's why I'm going crazy for this reaction. Something very small can escalate into something really big, and I think that was kind of the first time I saw it, and it really helped me to kind of do better when I'm going through discomfort, right? And pushing yourself to continue.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to bring back to the topic of the podcast because Kevin was mentioning how, he wants to improve himself and be better. What was really the story behind creating that podcast? Was it, I know it says Mind Diary,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
my guess is keeping track of whatever you're doing
Yeah.
to be uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I think at first it was just more for myself to have something of an outlet to express myself. And what I've noticed is there's two parts to it. I think one is I was documenting myself and I was seeing the growth. And I was like, I want to make sure there's a way I can outlet this and make sure I could document it in a very good way. And I prefer speaking much more than like just typing, writing and stuff. So that's just kind of my outlet. And the second thing really is that during that time was when I first discovered like dreadful commutes of like hours on end of going to like office, right? And don't get me wrong, I love music. I think everybody here loves music, but it does get repetitive, right? And that's one thing that's very interesting about podcasts. Like we're using different sounds and vowels to create very different meanings behind each sentences, and it's so much flavor and there's so much variety and concepts and ideas. You can go on for hours. You can talk to your best friend for hours and days. You can listen to the same song for an hour a day, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was so interesting to me. Like I was able to sit through like 3 hours with him first, just talking about some random subject of his studies, right? And I'm like, okay, I could do this. I think I want to try this. Full disclosure, when I made the podcast, never thought I'd make any money. Never thought I'd have any visibility, really. I never marketed it. Never really shared out my story. It was for myself, and somehow magically people did find it. I have like 1,500 active listeners.
Wow.
shit.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. There's people from Brazil, Argentina. It's weird. I don't know how this algorithm works.
Amazing, man.
But I do think it comes from just being consistent. And my motive behind being consistent wasn't like I need to see X amount of results from my first 10 uploads. I need to have this many clicks. It was more like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting. Why don't I just every week go to the coffee shop, write what I feel like I learned this week, document it at night, and have a process. So there wasn't any. It was and this applies to a lot of my different things of life. But it's like I'm more invested in the journey, the climb, rather than the viewpoint at the end when you do reach the summit. I love that as well. Obviously, everyone does, but I think I'm more invested in the actual climb, enjoying that, enjoying the breeze, the trees, the soreness on my legs, that kind of thing. I've always been this type of person, and that's how I led to a series of like entrepreneur projects and all that stuff too.
And definitely, and coming back to really your past, is there anything really that made you want to seek more discomfort, like, you know, the families?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my mom's motto has always been that, right? So I'll give you guys a little bit of a scoop on my life story, I guess. My mom and dad, they were very lucky to be in the booming age in the tech, you know, back in the tech days, like the 1990s, 2000s. Like, right? Like it was like the best time. DVDs were just coming out. Like it wasn't like Apple wasn't even relevant yet, right? So they were lucky to be part of that and being educated enough to take advantage of it. So they had this like DVD company that did really, really well. They sold to like Jackie Chan was our sponsor. I still have like the bags of posters. Yeah, it's called Idol DVD. They did so well that they were like 28, 29. Didn't really know what to do with their money. Like they had way too much money to be in China at the time. And now China, you could be a king, right? You could have all the service. But back in the 1990s, China doesn't even have taxi service. Yeah. Like you're using like tricycles still. Like it's like a whole different time, right?
We're still a third world country.
Exactly, in the 1990s. So I think at the time, one of my mom's friends went to UBC in Vancouver. She was like an early adopter too, right? She's like in her 20s studying like the 90s, and she was like raving on about, oh my God, Canada's so amazing. People here are nicer, weather's nicer, the government's nicer, all that stuff. So my mom and dad being in their 20s too, and I completely understand, I never blame them, sold everything they had. They kind of just like invested in this move before even going there and like seeing if they like it, which is probably would have been a good idea, right? But then they were just oversold so much. They come over here. My dad, obviously, like most Asian dads, did not enjoy the environment of being here. You can imagine why. Like Kevin, like, you know, like back in China, business is very like formal. Everyone sucks up to the CEO, you know, he's a big deal. He gets worshipped. Yeah. Here, it's like dude, like you can't even order a burger at McDonald's. You don't speak English. Like my dad didn't speak the language. He just felt very alienated from the society. Yeah. Right. And what's the point of having money? And so even though back in the days the houses are like 100 grand, 200 grand, we bought like the shittiest condo that existed in Richmond. I'm talking like just a shed, like a 2-bedroom shed for like fucking like 10, 20K, something ridiculous at the time, right? Back then, like mansions are worth like 300K. Yeah. We didn't invest in any of that. My dad ended up not liking it. He moved back by himself. So that's kind of how I think the marriage kind of went wrong, I guess. And I think I don't blame my dad at all. I think a big part of it is that my dad prioritizes business. He grew up in a family of 11 kids. He was the only one that made it out of the village, and everybody else depended on him from the family. He took everybody out of the village after started this company.
He had a lot of responsibility.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So for him, like business and being able to be successful is his identity. Yeah. It's not the family. The family is great. As much as I hope that was his identity, it wasn't as much as I would have liked, right? That doesn't mean I have to be the father he is. I think I can learn from that and everything else. But I think that was his priority, and that's why he went back, try to build new startups. But as you know, out of 10 startups, like only one succeed. He built 9 more, none of them worked out, lost. So what actually like broke my mom and dad's marriage, and my mom still talks about this at dinner every single day, is that obviously all the money that we made, he kind of lost all investing in startups and whatnot. But what really cut the line was my mom and dad did leave me a few $1 million. Like Asian parents do this, right? Like if they're really comfortable, it's like a little bit of like what do they call these? Trust funds these days?
Trust funds.
I don't have them anymore, so I don't know what they're
college
called.
Fund. Sure,
college fund. It's like a few $1 million for your school and everything you need, right? Like my mom actually didn't know, so my dad took the money and used it on some shit and lost it. My mom only discovered it when the money was gone. So to my mom, that was like, damn, like you really don't give two shits about our family.
That's the line.
You've lost. It doesn't matter how much, but like the part that's keeping the family just to have food and dinner on the table, like how can you give that away, right? So I think that mom, actions speak louder than words. My mom kind of just knew that he wasn't really that committed to us, and that's how they split up. So obviously my mom couldn't really live here by herself, so moved back to China, did the whole 5 years of boarding school and everything else. Pretty tough, honestly. Chinese education is on a different level from Canadian education.
100%. In terms of structure,
yeah, you were saying first grade math was high school math here?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Not even just that, bro. It's like physically demanding. 6 a.m. runs. True, like mentally, you're studying at 9:30. I don't even study at 9:30 in college.
Yeah, like, making you do military schools before you take your exams.
And dude, we eat like prison food, man. We eat like you get a scoop of bak choy, you get a scoop of like tomato, and then that's about it. You get some rice, and we pay like you have to like donate money to go to the school. I don't understand how the system works, but I think it made me really appreciate Canadian education system though, coming back in grade 5 and doing all that. Sorry, I went on a tangent there.
But I think it showed you a lot of kind of discomfort early on.
A lot of discomfort. To me, I think I was surrounded by discomfort a lot growing up. So it was never a mindset of how do I avoid it. It was more like how can I survive it.
Oh,
Yo, same, man.
And
I feel that.
Right. And I think
feel that.
even right now, I do practice in a different environment because
Yeah.
we're not starved for food now. Right. So
No,
it's like, okay, how can I still take that mentality? And one thing I've picked up is hot yoga, where like you do yoga in a room 45 degrees for an
Yeah.
hour. And I think what I noticed about that is like, I literally feel like I'm about to pass out.
Yeah.
But by just being in present forces me to feel so connected to my consciousness and like that comfort. That comfort that you find in discomfort is not equivalent to any. You can lie in any position on the couch, lie in any mattress foam. You won't feel that comfort just being comfortable.
Yeah.
You see, that's the beauty of it. I think to really find that. James can maybe share some of your stories. You seem like you can echo a lot with kind of like that upbringing.
So I mean, I actually talked about it on last week's episode, but my dad was like a military leader in the house. My brother and I, we were just scared shitless of him. Like I remember, he'd drive me to school every morning, and I'd be sitting frozen because I'd be sitting in the front seat. I'd just be terrified. Like I'd feel stress all over my body, and then I'd like hide to even text. Like I don't even know why he would be mad for me texting, but I'd be like this on the car, like
Tough, man.
like
See,
I felt like that.
I don't know if that's better or worse. Like not having a father figure or having one you're just not connected with in any level. You know,
like
it's tough.
yeah, like in hindsight now I understand, why he was like that when we were younger. Like business was good, but the neighborhood was tough. So there was a lot of theft and gangs and motorcycle gangs that they were.
He was being
dealing
the
with.
overprotective parent that he thought he would.
My mom and my dad were both working at the store, and like they'd get robbed at like gunpoint.
Man, that's tough.
And like you're dealing with crackheads every other night. So when my dad would come home, he would bring that energy.
For sure.
At
He's
home,
still
you know?
guarding. The guard's
Yeah.
still up
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah, like there was one chick that like she wanted to buy a bottle of wine, but she didn't have the money. So my dad's like, "Nah, get out," and then she just threw it at the counter, and then all the lighters and the counter. Just, like,
Wow.
Like a movie
And he came
moment,
back
man.
he came back home that night, and I mean I don't know, like I was probably sleeping, but I'm sure he was in a great mood. But that energy was
Exactly.
lingering
You're always
in
worried
the
every day
house.
going home that like
Yeah.
there's something going on. So like that's one thing like I want to
Yeah.
like say is like, and I want to have a huge shout out to my mom. Like if anybody asks me what's my superhero, what's my role model, it's my mom, right? Because
Shout out. Yeah.
huge shout out. And just going back to this, and this was so important to me is that like even though we didn't have a father figure in the house, she never made me feel like I needed a dad. She took care of the bills. She cooked. She cleaned. She was always home whenever she could,
Yeah.
right? And whenever I went home, I was like, "Mom, I'm home." It's not like, "Oh fuck, I gotta hide myself." It's like I'm
Yeah.
excited to see my mom. It's a warm household. It's not the biggest house. It's not the largest meals, but it's like the warmest house. Like she made me feel very loved growing up, even though it was just by herself. So like huge shout out to her.
Wow, that's touching.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Like I've never met such a woman like this because I kind of want to follow up back to this whole uncomfort thing. I think the part that really changed me as a person fundamentally, growing up, I was nothing special. I was also a rebellious kid. I played whatever, four square, whatever growing up. I didn't study that hard. And I honestly was a B student all the way until like grade 10. And one thing changed in grade 10. So to give you some context, obviously me and my mom moving back to Canada was a very tough decision for her. Later, it is only recently that I found out she was crying to herself to sleep every night. She never told me that. I didn't know. I thought we were having a great time together.
wow.
She was holding it down
I thought
for
every day we'd like go to
everyone.
play tennis and stuff, and we'd be happy. And I didn't know that. I thought we were having the perfect life,
Yeah.
right? But I realized that recently, and I was very sad for me. But it was really like kind of like nice to know that she can tell me these things now, right? But going back to this, basically, she went back to like the bottom. She went from like having chauffeurs to like waitress. She was a waitress at a Hong Kong dim sum place.
Wow.
She was a waitress for a long time, and then she realized I wasn't sustainable for her body. Like she was getting a lot of like chronic pain, walking around for like 12, 14 hours. So she started doing like immigration services, but like the work of it, like basically, you know how like there's big immigration services will take care of rich people from China and stuff, and they'll do their insurance, so the estate plan for them, all that good stuff, right? Sit them with the golf membership, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
My mom was the person that would pick them up from the airport at like 3 a.m. or whatever the fuck they get in. She would carry their bags, she would be their butler. But the thing is, one thing about my mom is she's very likable. She's very extroverted. She's like 10 times more extroverted than I am. She's very emotional intelligent, so everybody loved her. Even though she wasn't the advisor selling the investments, these people were like fucking like close one the second they walked through the door. Contacts close on me, it's a done deal. Like the second they walk in the immigration, they're like, yo, we loved your service. What can we help? You know, so, but then the problem was the boss didn't really appreciate my mom because honestly, and this is how it is with corporate, it's like the hardest working person is never the one they appreciate because they're already fucking working so hard. Yo, they were like telling my mom, like, yeah, you're reimbursing too much gas bills, even though it was just for the airport. I'm like, yo, her job is to drive people from the airport to their house.
She was too good for that job.
Right? And then she was getting paid on hourly. So even though there were deals being signed, she was getting like $12 an hour, something ridiculous. And at one point, and this is where I like huge respect for her, she actually quit the job. We were on like no income for like 6 months, and she's like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna be advisor." So, but she doesn't even speak English that well. Like she literally came here when she's in her like 30s, right? She never really learned it in school, so she just like grinded every day. Every day, I'm just sitting in her corner. She's just reading like a book this thick, English textbook.
Wow.
And like for me, before this, I was fucking around. Don't get me wrong. Like before grade 10, I was like just doing every other kids, right? Just fucking around. And then in grade 10, when I every day would come home, I'm like, I'm about to get on League, run some League of Legends, you know, with my boys. I see her like the second I walk in, she's grinding with her fucking glasses on. I'm like, yo, I can't be that much of a bum. Like I can't be worse than my mom. Like she's like, you know what I mean? So that
you have to work hard.
And she never like, so before like I guess like growing up, like my dad and stuff, like the persona was always like work hard, like pushing me. But then after grade 10, because she was so forced to push herself, she actually didn't push me anymore.
She had no time to
She had no time to push me, bro. She didn't have time to tell me if I did my homework because she's doing her homework, right? So it really forced me. And I think this is where the power of influence comes in. It's like sometimes parenting is not about telling them what to do. Doesn't matter how you say it. It's showing them what to do. Yeah. Like she's showing me how showing me how it's done. And that literally, like even today, I get goosebumps when I think about that scene of, you know, walking in and seeing my mom like that. And she did it for 6 months. It wasn't like a one night thing. And somehow she actually passed her first time.
Well, like the English exam? Like,
not the English. It was the IFIC or something so she can do life insurance. Financial stuff. It's not just English. It was
it was
banking.
Wow, that's so
English
tough.
and other
I was
stuff,
struggling to get that banking. I got like a fucking 75, man. Like I barely passed, but like 70 was a pass. So like mod respects for her, right? But also not jumping from that, she was a vice president of the Sichuan Association in Vancouver.
Okay.
So then basically, she was she met a lot of very successful people.
Yeah.
Did their insurance for them. Now we have a few places of our own. We can call home. Like I think now we're a lot more comfortable. But that's how it all started.
She built it from scratch.
No handouts from the fucking textbook, bro. From sitting on the stairs and just doing her own thing. So like that story to me is just so inspiring because it feels like I can do anything. I've seen it my first hand, right? And if she can do that, she's giving me like 10 times of what she has in terms of capability, language, certifications. So I need to like, not just for her, for myself. And this is where the ego comes in. For myself, to make myself worth, I think I need to do something that's a little bit more.
Make yourself hungry.
Exactly.
She was actually hungry.
Exactly. And I think that's
starve yourself.
That's like kind of my like parenting story. It's like I wouldn't have had it any other way, right? Because if you think about it, if the perfect Cinderella story was that they both loved the place here, we bought mansions on top of mansions. I drove sports cars.
Different life, eh?
I wouldn't be the person I am sitting here, man. I think I wouldn't have any of the things I have today. I would have all the materialistic things, but I wouldn't have any of these concepts, any of the hardship, any of like
values.
Exactly, man. And I think that's what makes a person. It's not the clothes, man, right? So I mean, and that's why I showed up in a wife beater because I don't want to be defined by what I like. That's never been me. Yeah. It's so that's kind of how I grew up.
It's actually very interesting looking at your mother's story because it reminds me of this concept by, I think it was Bud Triple. It's a reality distortion field from Steve Jobs. It's basically a concept where that when you're around a certain person, that person is so dedicated to its cause and wants to achieve the impossible that everyone wants to achieve the impossible with that person. And I think now it pretty much translates to what you're doing currently with it was A&E
Academy,
and all of your other endeavors where you're using your career and you're using all the things, all your knowledge around you to help people out. Do you want to hop into how really much you took those concepts from your mom? And
For sure. I think, first of all, me applying to Stanford was the definition of trying the impossible, right? Because it's like, I'm a regular kid from Vancouver. I went to school with all my high school friends. Like, I know I'm not dumb, but I don't think I'm like intellectual at that level.
Not academic.
Not
maybe
academically. Not
maybe not
academically.
as academic, but not dumb. Yeah.
But one of my mom's
Street
favorite
smart.
quote is like, well, that's what all the clients tell my mom was that you're so much more emotionally intelligent than you are. It's called
IQ.
IQ.
Yeah.
And my mom's like, I don't know if I should be offended or not.
EQ over IQ.
Right, and I think my dad was a lot more on the IQ side. I think I like to think I'm a fine mix of both, but basically when I applied, it was that. It was like, dude, honestly, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, I've tried so many things. What could go wrong? Luckily, I did get accepted. I went there, and I think that's how it transformed me, right? An example I can give right away is like, if we were to compare the students of UBC students versus a Stanford student, what do you think is the major difference?
Ooh, very good question. I don't know.
Like, do you think it's the like habits? What do you think it is, Kevin?
I think it's probably the backgrounds they come from.
That is very, very important as well. I think how they got there is a lot of the background, right? But what makes them different and what makes them different going forward and what their project versus my friends in UBC is whenever I asked, so when I was new at, UBC, I'd ask my seniors, I'd be like, hey, well, what business class should I take for the marketing? They're like, oh, if you want a good mark, like 30% attendance on this one. This one is just 50-50 exam, midterm and final.
Whatever
That's
You can-
McGill too. That's McGill too.
Right, it's easier, whatever you prefer. Over there, it's like, okay, what's your startup on? Like, what's your project? Do you want to build something podcast related? Oh, shoot, this guy has a huge podcast. You should connect with this professor. They already have this program going. You should join that. Oh, you're into robotics. Oh, well, like you should join this class, X and Y, Z.
Damn,
It's a network.
It's the mindset and the network, right? It's just like they're thinking about it from a different perspective. Like I'm taking business marketing to get an A. That's my success.
Yeah.
To them, they're taking marketing so they can brand, they can do their KYP, they can like do their branding. They can apply what they're learning right away.
Process oriented.
Exactly. And I think that comes from the environment and everything else. But at least for me, I was very inspired by that. And I think that is the reason why in fourth year, it was the hardest I've ever worked in my life. Like to give you perspective, I briefly talked about in my intro, I was doing a full-time student. I tried to finish in 4 years. So like 5 classes, whatever. So I do it like Tuesday, Thursdays, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for the classes. I was a full-time TD advisor. So I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. And it'd be funny because the people I give investment advice to, I worked at the UBC campus, would be the professors. I'm like, you should get on this mutual fund, like it's funny. It was like a cross life, like I'm their student and then I'm like trying to give them advice, pretend to be someone else, right? And I think that's how I started all. And also I started a company called Prep Your Meal during that time. And that's mostly because every single day I was working out at 6 a.m. Every single day. And one thing I did notice about 6 a.m. is that it was extremely packed. You guys know about college, right? College is a time where like body image is like the most emphasized. Like everyone's so considerate for their entire image. So everyone's in the gym. But what's interesting for me, what I noticed is that even though there's a million people in the gym, why is not everyone not jacked? Why does everyone not have the abs they're looking for? Why is everyone not achieving their body goals? They're here at 6 a.m. too. So it's not a discipline problem, right? Could be working out, but at the same time, it could be that big of a difference, right? So what I noticed is, and most people say, is abs are made in the kitchen. Right, especially for people who have slower metabolism, you do have to be more diligent with the way you eat. So, another thing I noticed is that on campus, probably someone to Miguel, the food options are pretty trash.
Horrendous.
It's like fucking triple lows, McDonald's, and they're like disgusting, right? And they're not healthy, and they're not even that cheap, honestly. Like some of the pizza shops are like $20. So I was like, why can't I come up with a service utilizing the proximity of the campus so I can deliver on a weekly basis and utilizing my 4 ovens that me and my best friends have, and basically, and my best friend's a fitness, one guy's a fitness guy, one guy's a cook, and one guy's a nutritionalist.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, this is
team.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's one time I sat them all down. I'm like, let's do this. I learned a lot from Stanford. Let me apply all the knowledge. So I did A and B testing. I did surveys. I went to the gym. I asked people, hey, I'm just doing this project for my class. If there's something on campus for like $12, but they prepare your meals, would that be something you might be interested in?
Wow.
Something like, I'm not saying it's my business. I'm just doing research for this, whatever.
Wow.
I collected over like 100 responses like that way, and we confirmed that there is a lot of interest in it, and we confirmed the price range. So how it works is basically you could be a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. The only difference is 2 things. One is how clean the meat is, like how clean the diet is, also frequency of it. If you're advanced, you want to be instantly cut in, let's say a month, James, you should do the advanced program. It's 12 meals a week. You just eat whatever we give you, right? On top of like the protein shake and supplements, but that's going to get you there. We calculate the calories for you. We prep all the macros. We show you exactly what we're cooking. We try to be smart with it too. So instead of eating potatoes, we give you yam potatoes. So it's sweeter, but it's still healthy.
Still tasty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like the problem with that project is I loved it, by the way. I did it for a year. The problem was at one point we reached a breaking point when I was talking to my professor, and they're like, listen, if you guys don't like do this, like if you guys don't have 100 people on this and you're not producing at a scale, you guys are not going to make money on this.
Yeah.
There's no way. Like, you need to be good food. And this is the problem. Good food didn't even exist back then. Like, this is like in pre-2018. Like, this idea was pretty fresh and new, right? So I think my mistake there, and I'm taking going forward, is I try to do too much. You know, I think I'm trying to cover too much of the operation and spectrum. I'm shopping the meat, going to Costco, making the meat, I'm making the program. Good food is doing well because they're trying to sell it as an experience.
Yeah.
They're not cooking it. They're just sitting. If I just said the ingredients, I would have saved, like, most of the
Hell
problem was the
no.
labor.
Yeah.
It was operational time. We only had 4 ovens. At one point, we had 25 customers. You know, I was working on Sunday from like 8 p.m. to like 6 a.m. just to get all the chicken in the oven and out. Like, there's just not enough space, right? So that was kind of the big problem with Prep Your Meal. And I think I got to a turning point when I was offered the job in Toronto, which we can get into a little bit later, where it was an ultimatum. It was like, okay, should I drop this offer and just like go ham on this,
Go ham, go
spend
all
50K, 100K, get a facility, you know.
Get a kitchen,
But I was
yeah.
literally 18, 19, right? I was ambitious. I was willing, but I didn't know. I think I was over my head a little bit. So I was like, let me stay grounded. I have an opportunity here to go to Toronto, maybe meet some more people, you know, understand it more. And that company was dope. The guy who reached out, the CEO, he went to like Yale, like they're an education consulting company. So their whole brand is like everyone there, the consultants went to like
Top schools.
top Ivy League school, and we're basically consulting to help other people get into these schools.
Yeah.
Right. That was the idea behind the premise of that. They had 150 former admission officers. But yeah, like I moved to Toronto kind of from there, and yeah.
Yeah,
that.
like I wanted to, like, I think the biggest thing about entrepreneurs is that the first thing you think about entrepreneurship is that if I work hard enough and I put my body on the line, I will achieve something.
Good call out.
And that's
not
why,
the case. Yep.
you know, a lot of people, they tend to go all operational.
Yep.
They want to do all the marketing. They want to
Yep.
do all the logistics. And you realize that number one, you're going to burn out.
Yep.
Number two, you don't have enough hours in a day.
Exactly.
And same thing where Kevin, he burnt out trying to do this podcast because he was going
Going to work.
he was going
You're
to work.
building a new career, brand
Yeah.
new career,
Yeah.
branding a new project. It's a lot. It's a
And
lot.
then
It's
he
a
was
lot.
working all morning, and then he would go at night, come back, try to like post all the episodes on all the social medias, all the Facebook page, and at the same time re-listen to all the episodes. And marking James was burning out too.
All of us, all three of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it leads to understanding that there's only so much. And I want to dive into A&E, where it's less labor intensive, more knowledge based, where you can sit down and talk with people rather than going out and actually delivering the food yourself.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what good point, right? So I think taking my learnings, one thing about being an entrepreneur, I want to call out that part is I think hard work and dedication is a prerequisite to any success, right?
Yeah.
But it's not the only prerequisite. And I think it needs to be used diligently, right? In the right ways, in the right times.
Work smart also.
Mindset, exactly. But it's also pivoting. So, I think a big thing about Prep Your Meal that we could have done is we could have pivoted.
Yeah.
At the time, we didn't think, oh, why don't we just nail out, like, why don't we try it out? For our 25 customers, why don't we not cook it and just drop off the food? And drop off the price and see what happens. We didn't do all that. I feel like we were more, exactly like you said, locked into being hardworking, operational, doing the best. The ceiling is very low for that. And I think a good example is any SMB business, right? Any mom and pop shop, everyone works hard. The convenience store, any restaurant, it's a grind. You're waking up 6 a.m., you're closing the shop at 10 p.m. You're not denying that you're working so hard every day. But are you really achieving the results you're looking for? Is it scalable? Because you're not pivoting.
Are you
Right.
doing things that give you the biggest return
Exactly.
on your
and,
efforts?
and that's exactly, we can talk about it later, but that's why I'm in sales. I think that's the premise and the main idea and reason why I'm in sales. Like everything else gone, like, and this is obviously not how I would interview for a job, but throw away the clientele, throw away the business concepts, throw away like the communication. I enjoy talking to people. What it is sales is the only occupation, in my opinion, that has the most direct one-to-one payout ratio between your input and output. Right? Because if I'm working really hard to close the deal and I get it, I'm going to get paid out for it. Right? Versus like even our creative projects, like I told Kevin, and a lot of times is like you have to be invested more in the process than the outcome, because most times with these creative projects, it could pop off, but you don't understand when. Right? So you can't be like looking for that, waiting for that. You're only going to be disappointed. You're more likely to be, not always, but you're more likely to be disappointed than, meet your expectations.
Yeah.
You should enjoy what you're doing. And that's one thing. Prep Your Meal never kicked off. I never made $1. I've worked like countless hours for it. But what I can say is I've learned so much, and I'm a much better version of myself as a business person, as a doer, as a thinker than I was before I started the company. And that's what I told Kevin when you guys were going through that creative burnout, is that as long as you feel like you're a better version of yourself after this podcast, previous to starting it, then you've outdone yourself.
Yeah.
What would you have preferred to do that time doing? Play video games? Like do what, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yes, you're spending a lot of time on work, but it's like, if you're happy with everything you've done, if you've had 0 views, if you're happy with the progress you've learned, how to talk, you've talked to more people, you've learned more concepts, you've grew as a person.
Yeah.
Dude, like we're just monkeys trying to find things to do. If you're growing from it,
I love that.
if you're growing from it, I feel like that's the takeaway, right?
Yeah.
That's how I think. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and I think for us, talking about enjoying the process and enjoying what to do, right? Like even though with all our projects going on at the same time, the burnout, everything, like managing all the side stuff outside of recording the pod, the pages, the clips, doing the editing, all that stuff. But when we're in this room together, talking with each other, meeting new guests, I have never had a bad
Nothing
time
like it.
sitting
Yeah.
at the chair.
Actually, I just wanted to hop on a small topic with Kevin because out of all the 4 people sitting in this room right now, Kevin's the only one who really never had like a endeavor.
Yeah, this is my first. Yeah.
James had the clothing brand and also RXR with me. I'm
Yeah.
a photographer. I own
Yeah,
a
of
suit
course.
store.
Yeah.
You had your entrepreneurship, but KYP was the first thing that Kevin hopped on. Like,
Yeah.
Let's unpack that. What was the breakthrough?
Work smart, not hard.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think my whole life, I feel like I was so limited in my options or even my thought of the options that I have. But I just had such a strong desire to do something for myself. And not only that, to express myself. And I've always been inspired by James, like, cause he, out of the friends I grew up with, most of my friends were also on the same path. We just thought, we do well in school, we get into a good university, we get a high paying job, and then we just, go up the corporate ladder and stuff. And that was the only path
That was not me.
to a lot of the people around me, right? Yeah. And James was the only kind of anomaly in that group. He always was, working on his fashion stuff. He was on the social media influencer way before it really kind of blew up, like back in like 2008, those type of days.
Yeah.
With the initial YouTubers, right? And it was always something that I saw and kind of resented almost, because I really thought that stuff was cool, but at the same time I've been told my whole life, like, those paths don't lead to anywhere. So I kind of had this pride towards it,
Bit of ego.
a bit of ego. I'm like
he's not doing the right thing. I'm doing the right thing.
He's not doing the right thing.
all our boys at where we live, like they were all doing that path.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah.
Except for me.
Most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And imagine if at that age I had dropped that ego and reached out to you, like, I think what you're doing is really cool.
done a YouTube together.
Yeah. Imagine what that
You
would have
been a
led
different
to,
version
right?
of yourself.
Yeah.
It would have been a different version, but
Yeah.
it's never too
So
late.
honestly, I'm really inspired by this talk because, I'm, in my opinion, I recognize that I think I'm at more of a early stage of a lot of these things because I'm a late bloomer, right?
Exciting, yeah.
And so, it took me a long time to be able to kind of swallow my pride and kind of get the full benefits of getting mentorship and guidance from people who are better than me. Because I feel like a long time I was like, I know it all, and if I don't know it, it's not important. You know what I mean?
Do you think that comes from any parent traits, or where do you think that comes from?
Oh, you're having dinner with my dad tonight.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think after that dinner you'll understand a lot of my origin.
I asked that because I've seen your dad, and I feel like that definitely replicates a little bit. Over.
Yeah, and it took me a while to understand that I love my dad. He's like he's my biggest hero too. I admire him my whole life, almost to a fault. Right, to a point where
you're not flexible.
Myself was overshadowed.
Yep.
The direction of my life was 80% taken by him,
Yep.
and maybe 20% by me. Right, and I think to wrap up, Danny, what do you think? What do you think we're all touching on in this episode through all our little stories here that we've shared? What do you think the central theme was?
Honestly, well, the main theme was definitely just being uncomfortable with all the circumstances around you, right?
Yeah.
And I think the best things, and it sounds really corny, you know, every
always does.
investor all out there, it's like, you'll never succeed if you don't take risk.
Yeah.
Risk is everything.
I think to sum it up, it's kind of like to progress and approach success. It's actually doing the counterintuitive thing, like the thing that you were kind of shying away from, or you're always delaying because it's uncomfortable, because it's uncertain.
Yeah.
The more you go against that, the further off, the longer it takes for you to develop. But as you go into it and embrace it and accept it, that's where you really make the progress.
You fall in love with the process.
Definitely.
Right, because I mean, to be honest, like even pro athletes are like they're living their dream, but like you play a basketball game 3 days, like 48 minutes. What about the rest of the fucking like 100 hours?
At the gym.
It's gym, it's media, it's all the stuff that's in between. If you don't love that, you're not gonna love, right? It's so a majority of your day isn't that, and even the outcome. For example, like I got a promotion like a few months ago, like it made me happy for a day. All I'm saying is like the outcome isn't something that's actually lasting as it is the process, right? Like okay, you guys hit 1 million subscribers. Now what? Like, do you feel happy for sure, man? Right? But what's next? Right? It's the process that's next. Not right. You know what I mean? I think the process has to be. You have to be very process driven. You don't want to think about the outcome. You kind of just let it happen. That's just kind of my thing. And I think whatever the outcome is, you try to perceive it as how it grew, not the organization or the establishment, but yourself. Like, what did you take out of that experience? Okay, say. Mind Diary, I never dropped an episode. I never make another dollar. I've never made $1. I've had sponsors, but I've never done it because I just felt like, at least for Mind Diary, it was more of a passion project, and I didn't want to associate with business because then I'd be shouting people out. I'd be doing more hours and forcing ideas that aren't mine. So
Gotcha.
that's kind of why, yeah.
I think that's the perfect way to end up this episode. Like always, where can we find you?
You can find me on Mind Diary, MIND space diary, like how it sounds. And also you can check out A&E Academy. So maybe I'll talk about that in another episode, but we can talk about a little bit more about sales and essentially tech sales. So we help people get into tech sales, people who are seeking for a more flexible lifestyle, more remote lifestyle, want to take control over their life and have more projects on their own. Tech sales is a place that gives you the flexibility and time to do that. So love to share a little bit more of that if you're interested.
Definitely. Like always, my name is Danny. I'm here with my co-host.
KYP James.
Kevin G,
And remember,
The KYP.
kill your pride, baby.
Girl, I don't play. I'm not like your man. 확인해봐도 돼. Oh, girl, it's okay. It's okay. 널 사랑해. 줄 거야 만약.